Well, good morning.
Good morning, Laurie.
Hey, Doug. Happy
Yep.
Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. You finally got some sun out there in
We
Drayton
did.
Valley.
Yes, we
Okay, good,
did.
good, good,
Yes,
good.
on the deck yesterday. That was a good little sit.
Well, we've got a lot of rain out here. A little bit of a hurricane tornado touchdown,
Oh,
in Montreal, and
oh wow.
yeah, it's got everybody a little bit on edge. But the warning systems worked. It tore apart like many houses, and everybody was okay. All their phones went off like they're supposed to, and yeah, it protected people. So the
Good.
system's working. So that's good.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Well, welcome to the press box. Um, and I, this time last year, Doug, this very moment in time last year, our whole town had been evacuated because of the wildfires.
That's
We were
right.
living in a trailer, RV trailer, with another couple and three other dogs. And Ron and I, we were there for 2 weeks. And those
Wow.
flames, when you come to Drayton Valley and you drive into the town entrance, you can see where the trees burned right at they were licking our doorsteps.
Holy cow. We only
Yeah.
see out east here, like not east, but in Ottawa and Ontario, we hear about those things, and we get one half a day, maybe in 5 years of smoke from a fire up in Quebec. But that was just constant, right? I mean, it was never
Oh,
ending, right?
there were 150 fires burning around us. They were everywhere. There was only one way out of town. So the town only has 8,000 people in it, but we were all on the same street trying to get out. We couldn't go south because that's where the fire was. So we had to head north and east to Edmonton.
Wow, wow,
8,000 people trying to get out of here at midnight. The gas stations had completely sold every bit of gas. We couldn't get gas here.
wow.
Yeah, it was very scary, and we were very grateful to get back home. And it
Well,
was
it looks like the rain is plentiful everywhere right now,
yes,
So that's
oh,
that's a good thing. That's a positive sign. Now today we got Rob Pallante coming on the
uh-huh.
show, and professional athlete. I just missed him by a couple of years. This is his road to an NHL training camp, and what it was to get to that NHL training camp, and then not only that, but then the road after the whole hockey experience ended. And the reason we met was because our stories have so many similarities, including uh, head-on collisions on motorbikes with cars. So he's going to talk about that
Oh wow.
collision and how that completely changed his life years after his career ended. My accident, my road accident happened when I was in the middle of my hockey career.
Hmm.
His accident happened about 10 years after, 10 to 15 years after, so when he was just in his 40s. So
Right.
it's a fascinating similarity, and we've had some just incredible chats about this. So I'm really looking forward to diving deeper.
Oh, excellent. Well, before we bring Rob on, I should mention, first of all, a big shout out to your home TV and the staff there who've just been so wonderful helping us. Um, the Disability Channel, of course, which
Yeah.
is our home network. That's our home network, and that's our heartbeat there. And also, presently, we're streaming live on Facebook, my Facebook page, Laurie Davis. We're streaming live on Self Worth the Missing Link, Superstars, and we've got two of you here today, three of us here. Actually, Ramin and I were on earlier on our financial program, and somebody called us a couple of rock stars. So that kind of made me feel good today.
Hey, there you
Hey,
go. Right on.
and also my YouTube channel, just search Laurie Davis Show Host, and we're on. We're on there. We're getting out there, and one of our shows last week had 550 downloads that day. So we're really
people
excited.
people are paying attention,
I
and
think so.
I always like to mention I have a new program launching as well that's following the trauma code, and it's a new online program. I'm going to be making pieces of it available for people. So if people want to download it, or if you're somebody out there who wants to get the word out and marry up next to us and align with our networks and sponsorship, then we're happy to have the
Mhm.
conversation. Come join us. It's fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I always, I focused on the self-worth component, but that's just one small cog in a big wheel.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah.
From physical, like we're going to talk about that today.
Mhm.
From physical to mental, is it physical first? Is it mental first? Getting Rob's perspective of working with elite athletes, and he has a desire we're going to talk about driving the education down lower for younger kids, not just give them the education about getting out of the NHL, but what is it to go, what is it to start playing as a 9-year-old or a 10-year-old? Like what does it actually mean for the parents, and what are their expectations compared to what reality is? And I think that's important, right? We always need to look at different perspectives, especially parents. We get hung up on the fact that our child is going to make it, and sometimes that does a lot of damage to the child, and Rob's gonna discuss that as well.
Awesome. Yes, I know several families like that.
Yes,
They've
yes.
invested tens of thousands of dollars in trips and tournaments, and what did our guest last week say? Out of 30,000 players in 1975, only 6 got to the NHL,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Incredible.
30,000 kids playing hockey and 6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. We're going to take a little break, and we're going to see snowflakes floating up in the air. And it's 30 seconds, but this is an opportunity. If you have a product, a program, a service, a cause, an event coming up, which we do, which we can talk about too, and you want to advertise with us, we have those opportunities. So we'll just do a little 30-second clip. And while we're doing that, we'll bring Rob in, and you'll get to envision your product there, because we love to talk about we love to promote people. That's the bottom line. So here we go. Welcome back, everybody. You're watching the Press Box here on Tuesday with my host, Mr. Doug Smith, and our guest today, Rob Pallante. Have I said that correctly?
Close enough.
All right, close enough.
But we're good with Pallante. I get all kinds of different words.
Pallante. Okay. Well, welcome to the show, Rob.
Yeah,
I'll just stick with Rob.
Yeah. So good to have you on the show, Rob. Doug Smith, broadcasting from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, and you're in Ontario as well, Rob. Where are you today?
I am. I'm just outside of Hamilton in Waterdown, Ontario, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me on your show. I'm excited.
Wow, we just, with respect to the NHL, we just missed each other. We're going to talk about your journey, but we missed each other just by a couple of years. You're younger than I am, but it would have been a pleasure being on the ice with you.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to hearing about what you're doing today.
For sure. I think we're about maybe 6 or 7 years. But there's a lot of crossover between some of the players that you played with and the guys that I played with.
Sure, yeah, there's a few guys, right, that we know in common, and Rob, you're going to connect me up. I know, that's great. It's fantastic. It's
well, Doug, you might be older than Rob, but I'm older than everybody these days. So, it's okay. But you're not the oldest in the room ever when I'm there. Cool. All right. Yes, I want to know where are we going to start? What's the first question, Doug?
I'm curious. Like, I'd like to take a look at this today with you, Rob, as the road to an NHL training camp, because that day you'll never forget. The people that were on the ice with you, the drills that you did. You started somewhere. Every kid starts somewhere, and then they arrive. And I'm really curious to hear about, what happened to you when you got onto the ice, when you got to training camp. People saw your size, and they made perceptions about you, and sort of put you in a box to do certain things that's really not what you were designed to do. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that today as well. So maybe you could start, like, where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Mississauga.
Okay.
Grew up in Mississauga, Ontario, and came from a fantastic home. My parents both Italian background, so food was always very important at home. My parents were first generation Italian Canadians, so my father went to the storied St. Mike's High School and played hockey and football there, and played with a lot of NHLers before your time, Doug, with the names of Mahovlich and Keon and Cheevers and Gotti. So definitely was hockey and sports were in my blood. And so I started my career as a minor hockey player and growing up in Toronto, and I had a younger brother who played, and hockey very quickly became our focus. Back then, hockey wasn't a 12-month sport like it seems to be for a lot of young people today. So we played soccer in the summertime, and we were allowed to go and enjoy other sports. And that's a whole other topic we can talk about with the youth today. But
Similarity right there. My parents wouldn't let me play hockey in the summertime.
yeah, yeah, it was important to go play other sports and get outside. And, I remember when hockey season was over, we didn't get back on the ice till August.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it didn't make anybody worse than anybody else, but now it's become this real competitive business, and parents are pushing, and it's almost like you got to keep up with the Joneses in the summertime. And I coach in what's the GTHL now. Back when I played, it was the MTHL, and I see the pressures, and I see the pressure on the kids and the parents, and it's not a cheap sport to play 24/7, 12 months a year. So a lot of pressure to compete and come into the next season better than you were the year before, and how much training did you do, and what spring team did you play for, and all those sort of things are a lot of the questions the kids are talking about. They see each other all year round. So
How are the parents buying into that, Rob? Like, the ones that are extreme, and how do you deliver that message? Because here's an opportunity right here, because I'm sure there's a lot of parents listening right now.
yeah, it's challenging for me because I'd love to just wave a magic wand and say, keep your kids out of hockey, let them go enjoy other sports, let them play lacrosse, let them play soccer, baseball, whatever it is. Give them a chance to be kids in the summertime. The challenge with doing that is it's become a systematic issue where you're constantly having to recruit, especially at the AAA level. If your kid is playing at the AAA level, there's a lot of pressure that he has to be in a spring program, that he's got to be working on skills and skating and power skating and shooting and all of these drills, whereas they don't get to experience some of the other sports and cottage life and friends and just being outside. So
And so there's a pressure, an unneeded pressure, where if you don't show up at those summer camps, this is what I've heard, right? But I'm not in the hockey world that much anymore. But if you don't show up at these summer camps, then you're sort of marked, and you're probably not the guy that's going to get the second look.
they're looking for that kind of a commitment. And here's
Wow.
the what I call the GTHL, and it's a bit of a cesspool in the fact that a lot of the coaches there now run hockey schools and programs in the summertime.
Oh,
Those, if your kid doesn't come to my program, he might not be on my team. Right?
wow.
Whoa.
So that's how
It's
wicked it's
almost
gotten in
every
the
coach has a
GTA.
hockey school.
So there needs to be a plug put in this if Toronto is our experiment, right? Because we like that, it's probably happening in the bigger city centers, but in the smaller ones, it's probably still a little tamer, right?
60,000 kids registered in minor hockey in Toronto.
60,000.
60,000.
60,000 kids. It's a huge market. And
Whoa.
parents and coaches are looking at this. There's a money grab there, right? And
Mm.
then, when you start using, elite, the term elite and best of the best for 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds, I mean, show me an 8, 9, or 10-year-old who is elite by the real term elite. Doug,
Mm.
you played at an elite
Yes.
level. Were
Mm-hmm.
you elite at 8 or 9 years old?
Mm-mm.
No. And how much changes from 8 or 9 years old to the time they're 16, 17, 18? How many of
Mm.
those kids are not there at that age?
Mm-hmm.
But it's this
Hmm.
whole idea that, now it's bragging rights for parents. Oh, my kid plays with the
Oh,
best, or he's,
So, and the kid gets it in his head, this false picture of himself as some type of elite player, and it's just being planted in there.
wow.
being groomed
How's
at a
that
young
for
age
programming?
to consider himself to be an elite player. And there's so much that happens over the development of a player from the time he's 7, 8, 9 through his minor hockey years until he gets to junior. You know,
How
and
did you escape it? How did you escape that situation, or did you get caught up in it as well, and you just managed to break free?
so for me, during my time, Doug, there wasn't that much pressure in the summer times, right? So,
Okay.
like I said, I played soccer up until I was about 14 or 15. And it was around that age. And I also had my father to guide me, and I was very, very fortunate that he had played the game. And my dad, went on. He played junior at St. Mike's. He had a scholarship to Michigan Tech, and he was owned by the Leafs back down at a young age of 14. So he went to Leaf camp in I think it was 64 or 65. So I had his guidance, and I'm very fortunate that way. And
Mm.
he pushed me away from hockey in the summertime, pushed me into other sports, let me try other things. And so I was able to avoid that. At 14 or 15, it was okay. Now it's time to get serious. Now you need to make a commitment to one sport or the other. And I was a pretty good soccer player, but there were some circumstances that kind of pushed me into the direction of hockey, and I probably would have chose that anyways. But that's around the time that I made that decision.
What team did you play for? Let's give them a shout out.
So, well, I grew up playing for the Toronto Marlies for
Oh, you did. Ah,
uh,
excellent. What? Right on.
Marley for 4 years. I played 1 year in Mississauga, and then I spent my last 2 years, my minor midget year, with the Toronto Red Wings.
Very cool. And then what happened from there?
Well, after my midget year, I got drafted 52nd overall in the OHL draft to the Sudbury Wolves. I had because my father's career took him. Back then you could play major junior and you could get an NCAA scholarship. So, around my time, you couldn't do it. You had to choose. You had
I couldn't do it either. They wouldn't
yeah,
let. Yeah.
you could go to a junior camp for 48 hours, but after that you lose your eligibility. And
Yep.
so I made a deal with my father that if I got drafted by a team that was closer to Toronto, that I felt had an opportunity for me to go make the team and play, that I would go to camp. And at the same time, I was also talking to NCAA schools. So the word on the street was Pallante's interested in an education, not just hockey. And you know what that does to the OHL scouts? It makes them kind of pucker up a little bit. Are we going to take this guy? Like, I was rated in the second round, and I wound up going 52nd overall. Back then it was the beginning of the fourth round. So I dropped a little bit because my interest in an education. And then when I found out it was Sudbury, they were a bit of a struggling team, a little bit further away from home. And I promised my dad I would finish high school first, so go to grade 12, even though there was grade 13 back then. I finished grade 12, and I had a number of scholarship offers. So it was pretty easy for me after so I played 1 year at junior B back
Okay.
then. After that, I played a year junior B with Bramalea, coached by a gentleman by the name of Arnie Brown, who played a few years in the NHL. Also a St. Mike's grad, and my dad was a little disappointed I didn't choose to go to St. Mike's, but nevertheless, I had a couple of offers. Michigan Tech was one of them, and with my dad being an alumni there, it was pretty easy for me to want to go to the same school my father went to.
I was never asked or given the option to even look at school.
That's great.
Nobody ever asked me.
Yeah.
That was just like one of those things. And since the NCAA came into play, it's just made everything healthier, right?
Yeah. I think, Doug, like for somebody of your stature, like I wasn't going to be a first rounder in the O, and I wasn't projected to be a first rounder in the NHL at that point, so I think if you're a kid who has the type of talent that yourself or a Dale Howarchuk or somebody of that nature had. The quick path at that point back then was to go through junior hockey, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, and we talked about this, at 18, you're signing your first NHL contract. At 18, I was just arriving on campus for my first year at Michigan Tech. So a little bit of difference there, right?
Still deception.
Yes.
Right. So I've been now healing longer than I played hockey.
Yeah, me too.
There you go. Right.
Yeah.
And it's all these little things that I find out about over the years from people that I didn't, you know what I mean, that were disconnected from me, not by my own will, but by somebody else's will.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of crazy stuff happen to you when you showed up, right? Sometimes because you're a big guy. Huh? Like, what's your size?
Yeah, I'm 6'3". Well, I'm about 230 right now, but I was probably, my first year at Michigan Tech, I was about 6'1", 6'2", maybe pushing 179 pounds.
Okay. But a tall, but a tall guy.
Tall, lean.
And then they wanted you to sort of fulfill that role.
That wasn't until my first year pro.
Okay.
But my story when I showed up at Michigan Tech, I was on campus for 3 days, Canadian full ride. My head was this big, couldn't fit through the doors. Here I am, I'm ready to play. Where are the parties? Where are the girls? Let's go. Right. 3 days on campus, went to my first frat party, and all the guys on the team were there. We hadn't even really started our orientation yet. We were there in end of August, so school hadn't started. We're starting orientation. We're just getting ready to start training camp. We go to our first party. Most of the smart guys filtered out early. I stayed a little bit later, indulged in a couple of more beers. I was there with a couple of seniors. Randy McKay, who was a senior at the time, who wound up, Randy played in the NHL for a while, led the league in fighting majors, I think, 1 year. Him and I were playing pool, and he got bumped by somebody, and that person turned around, and he turned around, and he got sucker punched and kind of shook it off. And 5 guys ran outside, and he looked around and he goes, "Come on, kid, let's go." And we went outside and fought 5 guys in a parking lot. I broke my hand.
And you broke your hand.
Broke my hand. Day 3.
Oh, so you're ready. You just arrived. You're ready to go.
Ready to go. And so now he's worried. I'm panicking. I've been there for 3 days. We have to show up at for meetings the next day. I'm standing there now. I took a bunch of punches to the face, so I'm bruised. So I'm walking around the first 3 days with my hat like this, my hand like this, and so we start training camp, and I'm doing push-ups and pull-ups and bench press. And finally, I go to the trainer and I go, "There's something wrong with my hand. I'm not sure." And he looks at it, and the bone's almost sticking out of the skin. And he goes, "That's broken." He goes, "I don't know what happened, but that needs to be reset right now." So that was my first week at Michigan Tech.
Holy cow! And you were there for how long? And
I lasted 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So my first year, because of that, I missed my draft year. I wind up playing 1 game. And, this is where the mental struggle for me really started, right? Because I figured, okay, well, like I've been injured before, I'll heal and I'll get back into the lineup. What you don't realize is, at the NCAA level, there's 30 guys on the team. There's 12 defensemen. The rest 6. Right? So now here I am, 18 years old with a broken hand, and I've already betrayed the coach's confidence. And I'm trying to heal, get better, get in shape, and then jump into the lineup. Wasn't going to happen. So I got redshirted.
Wow.
Right. Came back my second year with the expectation that I'm a shoo-in. Right. Again, I needed some maturity and some growing up. And guess what? Well, the guys that graduated and left were replaced with another freshman class coming in. And I had a hard time. I really struggled mentally. I played 6 games my second year.
Okay.
And
6 times as many games as your first year, which is improvement.
But Doug, you can relate to this at some point in your career. I remember hearing you say You hated going to the rink. You're wondering why you're there.
Yeah.
All of those things were happening inside a 19-year-old's brain.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to talk to the coach and say, like, what do I need to do? Why am I not playing? And the best answer I got was just be patient and work hard. I'm thinking,
Yes.
well, isn't that what I'm doing? Right?
Exactly the same. And I was 19 and I was in LA and there was a fight and somebody needed to go out and fight Semenko, who was the toughest guy in the league. And the coach picked Paul Mulvey, and Paul Mulvey said, I'm not going over the bench. And Don Perry got sued by Paul Mulvey because he railroaded him out of the league. And I had to go to court and do a deposition against my current coach, what he did on the bench. And Paul Mulvey never got another look. Like, he was a really, really good player, big, solid, could score, like Brian McClellan type, right?
Yeah.
And I never saw him again. Like, he literally, like, you've been in the same boat. People just disappear, right?
Yep. Awful. That
Cool.
you get pigeonholed really quickly, right?
Yeah. And then what happened after that? Like, because you're still going after it, man, which is amazing.
Still chasing it. Really, this is where, like, I struggled because now I'm trying to balance school with hockey and this idea that I should be playing, but I'm not. And why am I not? And I would just sit and I would mentally just start to spiral downwards. I'd sit in my room. I cursed out the coach. I blamed other players. I did a lot of finger pointing and made up a lot of excuses. If I had, and one of the reasons I do what I do today is because of that experience. If I had somebody like me to talk to that could help flush some of that out and say, this isn't a talent or skill thing. This is a mental thing right now that you need to fix. You need to believe in yourself, Dr. Laurie. You need to believe in yourself that you belong here and you're here for a reason. And stop pointing fingers and go out there and become the hardest worker every day. Show up with a smile on your face, cheer your teammates on, and be the best version of you every day. But that wasn't.
Well, that's a beautiful thing that you found, though, right? Like, you were able to look at all the trauma and pick the pieces out, that you needed, and leave the ones that you didn't need anymore.
It caused a lot of heartache in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a lot. There's a lot of scars from that experience that I still carry with me, and I fall back into them every once in a while, right? And because it was very traumatic, because at that point in my career, up until that point, Doug, I was a guy that was like, hey, this kid's got an opportunity to play in the NHL. He's got the talent, he's got the skill, he can skate, shoot, he's big, he's strong, and from a talent perspective, if it was just a skills competition, I'd do well. But having to show up and mentally be prepared to sit in the press box, sit on the bench, play 4 shifts, not play, travel with the team, not play. Those are very hard when you're looking at your peers and you feel like you're being judged. And then your hardest critic is yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to go to that place. It makes you not want to go to the rink. And that's a confusing thing, because ever since we were kids and like young kids, we want to go to the rink, and then all of a sudden you don't want to go there. And it's like you're home, really, right?
My roommates would travel, they'd leave and go on the road trips, and I'd stay back and go to class and go to the bar and party. And, that was my way of dealing with it. Right.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
very quickly, started to fall into that, using alcohol and things as an excuse. And, my 3rd year, I came back with a little bit of a better attitude, played every game up until Christmas time. And back then, Michigan Tech, Michigan State, and University of Michigan played in the Great Lakes Invitational, which was a tournament played at Joe Louis Arena. And
huge.
Huge tournament, right? So I'm thinking, this is my coming out. I played every game. I'm going to be there. All the scouts are going to be there. Stands are going to be filled. Bands are playing. Had not played in a GLI game in 2 years. This was my year. Team shows up. We go out for our first pregame skate. We only play 2 games because there's 4 teams, right? You win, you go to the finals. You lose, you're playing in the consolation game. Go out for our first skate, and in college hockey, after practice, the coaches would post the lineup of who's playing. So everybody runs over and they check the list. Well, here I am. For the first time this year, my name's not on the list. And I'm like, why? What did I do? Right. So all of a sudden, I'm jumping back into my past. All that trauma just resurfaced, and I'm sitting there in my hotel room in Joe Louis going, okay, or in Detroit going, okay, it's okay. You're going to play the next game. We're saving you for the finals. So we played that game. We won the game. Next morning, we go out for our pregame skate. We had 40-pound weight vests on, and just a 40-minute skate. Come off the ice, same lineup. And when I made a really bad decision of walking into the locker room, taking off my weight vest, throwing it at the coach, and charging at him. I just felt like he was taking my career and just crushing it in his hand.
Yeah.
And that was the end of my college career at Michigan Tech. Basically rode the bus back home, packed my stuff, and came home.
You made a snap decision right at that second to end it all.
Yeah. I was not in the right mind. I just felt like, I just had not been given a fair shot.
Yeah.
And that my career is being crushed by one individual with no communication.
Oh.
What were your options? You were sort of down to one option, weren't you?
Well, look, they say hindsight's 20/20, right? So, had I have known this at the time, I should have just kept my mouth shut, gone back, finished out the season, because the coach didn't finish the season. After I packed up my bags and I came home, 2 or 3 weeks later, he got fired, and they brought in a new coach. And they brought in an assistant coach from Michigan State who had been scouting me in minor and junior hockey and wanted me to go play at Michigan State.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
So that's one that makes you sweat a little bit. What do you do today to manage the past? A lot of people want to hear that, right? Because we all of it, me, Laurie, we have trouble managing what we're thinking about in the future and what's happened to us in the past when it doesn't exist anymore. It's a crazy thing, right? So what do you do today? Because this has happened to a lot of people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I call this the floating head in my practice today, right? So the floating head is you're either thinking in the past or you're thinking in the future. And we know that to be the best version of yourself and be an elite athlete, your mind and your body need to be aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're thinking about things in the past, which you've already said, Doug, do not exist anymore, and you're jumping to the future, those what ifs, that those insecurities, the things that your mind will play tricks on, that also has not happened yet, and does not exist. So I use a simple thing that I had heard once is just look down and be where your feet are.
I like that. Never heard that one before. And I'm going to use it today.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it today.
Breath, look down, be where your feet are, come back up, and then align your head and your body, your mind and your body.
Cool.
That's fantastic.
Then what I use with my athletes now is a little analogy called win. After you do that, now you ask yourself, what's important next?
Okay, and you can always reset, right?
That's it.
That makes
another analogy, or 3 R's that I use: recognize, reset, refocus. Do it on a breath.
Yeah. So the work you're doing initially with the kids and with the players is all above the neck.
It's all above the neck.
Wow. Okay, that's so different. There was really nothing above the neck. It didn't exist during my era, right?
This is why when I look back on my career, and we'll talk about my accident, but it was while I was lying in the hospital bed, looking back and coming out of that, saying, I have this calling to give back and use some of my experiences. And I say, I want to help kids navigate through the minefield that I ran through and stepped on all the mines.
Let's fast forward to that, Rob. We have this in common as well, head-on collision with a car on a motorbike. But I'd like to hear the details because, I survived with a broken scapula, inverted, had to have surgery and turn my scapula, my shoulder bone around, bolt it back together. But what happened to you? What was the day? Tell me about the day.
Yeah, so the day was August 22nd, 2015. At the time, I was going through a separation. I was living at a buddy's house, couch surfing. My ex-wife and kids were living in the matrimonial home. I was coaching my daughter, who was 8 years old at the time, or 7. I was coaching her little U8 soccer team through the summer, and that Saturday happened to be their end of season little festival where all the teams play and they get ice cream and trophies and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it would be neat to ride my Harley down from my buddy's place, pick up my daughter and take her to the field, which was just a couple blocks away from the house. I was a block away from my house, and I could see the rooftop. I was going down a 2-lane road that was behind the house, and there was a woman coming the other way. And when you ride a bike, as you know, Doug, you're taught to look at the other drivers and look at their eyes to make sure they see you. She looked up and she saw me. And as we were approaching a road that was kind of a T off of our road, there was a dump truck parked here at a stop sign waiting for us to pass. And she put her head down, looked at her phone. I could see her do this and then start to turn the wheel. And as I was going through the intersection, I was trying to avoid getting hit by her and not drive headfirst into the dump truck. And she hit me broadside, crushed my bike. I got tossed about 35, 40 feet into a gravel ditch. The whole front of her car was accordion, and I was left on the side of the road fighting for my life. And so
what happened?
Yeah.
What did you break? Because it was probably a lot worse than anything you broke on the ice.
Yeah. So I broke all my ribs down the front, down the back, floating ribs. I ruptured my elbow, so I had bone fragments on the side of the road. My elbow tore right open and came out. Fractured my scapula. I had 2 tears in my aorta. Ruptured my spleen. Shattered my ankle, and tore my helmet all the way around.
So your prognosis wasn't very good at that particular moment.
Yeah, I don't remember the impact. All I remember from the accident was about 8 or 10 seconds in the ambulance, lifting my head, this surge of pain, blood everywhere, and the ambulance drivers or attendants were cutting my clothes off, and I asked them if I was going to die. And then I came to 2 days later in ICU. And unbeknownst to me, was the first night that I was in the hospital, my family was told to get a priest because my kidneys failed when I had gone in there. There was so much blood loss and trauma internally. They didn't think I was going to make it through the night. So given my last rites and, came out of it. I spent 2 weeks in ICU and another 2 years of recovery. I was told I was going to be in the hospital for 120 days, and I walked out in 40. And today I look back, and it was the best day of my life. It was the day that put me on the trajectory to be where I am today. And I remember, and I shared this with you, Doug. It was when I got out of ICU, there was a nurse that was by my side. And she said, we've had people with less injuries than you not survive. She said, you've been given a second chance at life. Don't waste it.
Oh, wow. So that was, that turning point was one that you haven't turned back from, right? Like you made that turn and you listened to what she had to say, and I hope you've gone back and looked her up and thanked her for saying that to you.
Well, it's interesting because I can't remember who she is.
Oh, okay.
This is where, I have, some very close friends of mine that are, we believe in energy and spiritualness now. And he says, there's probably a reason you don't remember her name, because it was probably your guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was a very traumatic day, not just for me, but for my family, looking back on this as well. And I shared a little bit of this with you, Doug, but so the backstory behind that day is that my grandmother, that was her birthday. It was her 95th birthday on August 22nd. 3 days before that, well, she had been living with my parents for about 3 or 4 years now as she was getting older. 3 or 4 days before my accident, she had fallen and hurt herself, and she was in the hospital with a hip injury. My parents returned from Hamilton General that night of my accident to a phone call from the Trillium Hospital in Mississauga telling them that my grandmother had passed.
Wow. So she left for you almost. Wow. That hits you. That'll hit our audience. That'll get our audience right
Oh
there,
yeah,
right?
that's beautiful.
Holy cow.
Beautiful.
I
Same day.
can't say that without welling up.
That's okay. You're allowed.
Well, you got me too, man. You
Yeah,
got
me
me too.
too.
That's
amazing.
It was
Beautiful.
a busy day.
And so, I had some realizations as well when I was in the hospital, and I've talked about them before, but what are the one or two, big sort of moments that I'm never going to do that again? Do you have any of those things that, because you got to eliminate stuff, not just add good stuff, right?
Yeah. No, so
Surrendering. It's called surrendering.
absolutely. I think, it was about owning the decisions that I had made in my past life leading up to that. So my previous life pre-accident.
Yes.
So if you look back on the decisions I made in hockey, the nights I chose to stay out late, drink more than I should have, break curfews, all those sort of things, and then make excuses about why I wasn't playing at the level I should have been playing at with all the talent that I was supposedly had. I really break it down to, every day you're given, hundreds of decisions to make, and being able to recognize which one is going to help move you forward and which one is going to move you backwards. And I use a real simple analogy with a lot of the young players I work with now. I'll stand at the front of a room if I'm working with a team, and I'll hold up an apple and a bag of Doritos, and I'll ask them which one is healthier. They all laugh and they go, the apple. I said, well, the Doritos are, once in a while you're going to have some Doritos, right? Kids, well, yeah, we like Doritos. The challenge is that every decision that we make is either apples or Doritos. And, I tell the kids it's okay to have the Doritos as long as you're choosing apples more often and moving yourself forward. Because if you choose the Doritos once, it becomes very easy to choose them again and again and again.
And that's neuroscience.
Yeah. And then, and so, sorry, I got a phone call coming in on my computer.
Oh, that's okay.
And so what happens is now in a year from now, you're stuck in a bag of Doritos wishing you chose the apple. Right.
So that's an analogy for so many things in our life, right?
So if there's one thing, it's stop, pause, think about how I'm going to respond, because everything we do is based on how we respond to the event that just happened. If there's one thing that we know that I've learned that you can control, it's how you respond. Right? Choose.
Well, we're conditioned though to react.
Yes, that's an emotion.
Right? React, because that's where we go with it. But when it comes to decisions, a lot of people say, well, I didn't have a choice. And what they don't understand is they had lots of choices, but they just didn't make a decision.
Yeah.
Right. They didn't own the decision. So you're really right on, spot on there.
I read the book As a Man Thinketh.
Yes.
There's that moment between stimulus and response where you get to choose how you respond. And a lot of people, as you alluded to, Laurie, respond with this this social training or this emotion. And if you can learn to choose behavior over emotion, I think that you're more likely to enjoy the outcome. You don't control the outcome, but you can certainly influence it better by training yourself with a behavior than an emotion.
Yes, your odds are way better. It's palpable and measurable now, right?
Absolutely.
That's a good message for our audience. So when you're working with kids, like what are the ages you're working with right now? What's your main focus?
Yeah. So I've got athletes as young as 13, 14, up to, 25, 26, 27.
Mm-hmm.
Got, a young man who I've spent 3 or 4 years with now, football player who came out of Mississauga, and he's a fantastic story because he's been an underdog his whole life, and right now he's at the New Orleans Saints training camp in his first year, competing for a spot.
Oh, congratulations! Holy cow!
So
That's
fortunate to be included. He asked me to go to the NFL draft with him, so I got to spend 3 days with him and his mom in Detroit at the NFL draft and experience all of that.
So it's not just hockey. You're doing sports. You're just like Laurie. It's ubiquitous what you do, right? It's not the skills. It's not to create a harder slap shot or faster feet.
Yeah.
This is to make sure that you're tuned so that you do get faster feet and you do get a harder shot. That's what we're talking about here, right? That's a big change.
When you're working with the head up, it's not sport specific.
Yeah, it's so refreshing for me. It's like this huge relief, right? That this is getting done now, because it's one of the reasons I do what I do, same as you, right? Is to fix it, and to hear like that you're doing work and that this is changing and that there's other people. I'm sure you're networking with other groups of guys that like you're trying, like attracts like, right?
Yeah. There's so much need for what we do from the neck up. That I think it was Tony Robbins or Dean Graziosi who said that there's need for 1 million new mental performance coaches a year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, just as a note, I taught Tony everything he knows.
Did you?
Awesome. Pretty much.
That's fantastic. You taught him well.
No, it's this space and helping people find their niche in this space, and this is so valuable. Letting them know, like, you played the game, you can go out there and you can fire the shots. You can instruct on that. The physical part is easy. I've always said this to people. The physical part is easy. It's just it's basically time that you're trading for skill. But you can't measure your brain and your brain's capability on the same measurement scale, right?
It's funny, you ask any pro athlete or any athlete, how much of your game is mental? And the typical answer you get is 60, 70 or north of that percent.
Yeah.
And you say, well, okay, so how much time every week do you spend working on the mental game? Oh.
Yes.
More than 10? No.
They do for the first week. For the first week, they'll do it, right?
Yeah. It's like anything else. It's like any other muscle. And, like if you look at 4 legs of a chair and you go, okay, you need 4 equal legs to balance a chair or a table. If you look at an elite athlete, you got your technical, tactical, physical, and mental. The technical, tactical, and physical are the 3 legs that most athletes spend all their time conditioning and training. The mental leg is the one that's going to make that table or that chair a little wobbly. And the athletes that rise above, because when you get to a certain level, talent versus talent, it's the guys that have spent time developing that mental leg that are going to have the advantage.
Personally, weakest link, it was video. I could never watch myself make mistakes because I was so conditioned to not be allowed to make a mistake. So Roger Nilsson was our first video coach in LA, right? They
Yeah.
gave him a little tiny room beside the weight room and a little tiny TV like this. And I just would do anything to avoid it, right? I would hide from it. And it was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I had made because it's such a huge competitive advantage. Nobody was there to sit me down like you and say, you know, it's okay, Doug, you know, like, let's just have some fun with this, right? No, missed it.
It's okay. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying.
Well, yeah, I needed to hear that, but nobody had those words back then. It was like, you know, if you didn't do it, you were getting in trouble. That was it. Well, I don't understand. I'm 18. Like, tell me more. They didn't want to tell me anymore.
My first experience with video wasn't until, my first year of college in the NCAA. And in practices, the coaches were telling me, you got to I was a defenseman. You got to get back into the corner and get lower when you're picking up the puck. And in my head, I'm going, I don't know. Maybe get back faster and get lower, right? And then one practice, they actually taped my hand to the bottom of the stick, which was just another mental cue that I was like, oh, please don't embarrass me. Which they did that. Then finally, they showed me in video, and I go, oh, get back quicker and get lower. Now I was able to take that mental image and use it as part of my visualization now to feel what it's like to get back a little bit quicker and lower on the puck. But not seeing yourself in that third person or on video, you're what you believe is happening and what's actually happening. Like they say, video doesn't lie now, right?
There's a huge advantage, but it was my conditioning of never make a mistake, never let somebody always be between the net and your guy. Don't expose me, right? I don't know if you ever felt like that too in your early days of competitive.
Sure.
It was like there was this exposure happening when it was actually something good.
Yeah.
For me. It was like a piece of cake, and I was pushing it away like it was a time bomb. Because nobody was there doing what you're doing. This is exactly what you're doing, is educating them on what they actually have to work with, because they can't see it, which is brilliant. I'm so happy about this. Like I've got a couple of people here in Ottawa that I'll talk to about you. Send them to your work for sure.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with a young man, played for the 67s this past season.
Oh, you did, huh? Oh, good.
His production almost tripled from the time he worked with me until the end of the season. So I picked him up at Christmas time, and he had 4 points. And this is a second rounder, and he had 4 points, and he was struggling, and he was falling into those same traps where coach doesn't like me, can't do anything right, he's on my ass all the time, all of these sort of things, and and then he felt like he was pressured that he had to have more outcome, more goals, more assists. That's what he's hearing from the top down. So what I had to do was unlearn all of these things, that it's okay. Mm-hmm. Actually, your coach is probably putting pressure on you because he expects more from you. It's not that he doesn't like you. Let's just try going out and practice with a good attitude and doing the things he asks, and then take pressure off of getting goals, but doing all of the things that put you in a right position to be able to take a shot on net, right? And so we developed a little thing where he wrote down these initials with the number of goal or points that he wanted to finish the season with. So we talk about recognize, reset, and refocus. We put it on the knob of his stick. So every time he was on the bench, he would go through this breathing routine, and he would just stare at that little initial with the number.
Yeah.
And that was his cue to think about, what do I need to do next? And he wound up finishing with almost 20 points in the last 20 games that he worked with me, 25 games, and then he had 5 points in 6 games in the playoffs.
Nice.
Wow! So you're taking the language that's being spoken to him, and you're translating it for him.
Yeah.
Right. Because we all know those feelings. Somebody wants you to do good, they push you a little bit hard, then you think you think they hate you.
Yeah.
Right. And if all you need is that little subtle nudge, support, hug.
That's what I needed.
Yeah,
that's what you needed.
That's what I needed too, man.
Right. Well, listen, guys, Can you believe that our time is just about up? Like you guys, and they say that women talk. Okay. There's another myth we just busted on the show today.
There we go.
Rob
Well,
Pallante, you are amazing.
yes.
Thank you.
Wow.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Now, how do people reach you? If they got a child,
yeah.
they got a teenager, they got a high school, whatever it is, like any sport, not just hockey.
Not just
Like,
hockey.
how do they reach you? Is there a website?
Yeah. So my website, my business is called Mindset Body Bank.
I'm
So
just going to put that up on a banner. Okay. Mindset
Bank, all one word. So it's
Yes.
www.mindsetbodybank. And, you know, the principle behind it is aligning your mind and your body. And then the bank is making withdrawals into yourself on a daily basis.
I love it.
So you can find
Beautiful.
my website, and my Instagram is the same name.
Wow, that's amazing. It ties in perfectly, you know, to this other, like to John Upledger's work, your inner physician in you, you know, to this guy's work, you know, to this work right here. It seriously ties into all of it. So keep doing what you're doing, like, and as it gets better organized, and you get more results, like, let's get you back on, right?
Absolutely.
These stories are incredible. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have a little quick story though, and it's a hockey story that I can share based on what you've talked about, Rob Pallante. I got it.
Yes.
I was a school teacher, and I was teaching grade 6, and I had this young man, 5'11". His name is Cam Russell. He now manages the Halifax Mooseheads, but I was his teacher in grade 6, and he was playing hockey in Cole Harbour in Nova Scotia at the time. Very good hockey player, ended up playing with the Chicago Blackhawks and all that. But his mom was a very good friend of mine, and she taught kindergarten upstairs. They had 2 boys, Mark and Cam. Mark was the intellect, the high grades, the high marks, everything. Cam was the brawn in the family, they called him. So first report cards came out, and Cam had done like amazing, better than he had ever done in school, ever. So his mom comes down to me and she says, we're blown away. Like, we didn't know that Cam had any kind of brains other than playing hockey. Now imagine playing hockey. And I had been brought up watching professional hockey, but I turned to her and I said, well, I think you have to be really smart to play good hockey.
I think so.
I think so too. So here, congratulations, guys. That took brains. Just saying.
There you go. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Laurie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. And thanks a lot, Rob. It's been fantastic. We'll talk to you very soon.
Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have you back.
Great chatting. We'll let you talk a little more next time, Laurie.
Oh no, I'm okay. I've been taking notes. I'll have lots to say to you when we talk. Okay, everybody have a great week. And Doug and I'll be back next week with another special guest. Doug, you're doing a great job on getting great people on your show. Yes, that is it.
Love it.
All righty, ready to go?
See you, Rob.